might be 100, in other cases might be 30%. And the National Treasury issues an instruction note to all South African entities when they are undertaking tender and procurement processes to ensure that those designated products are procured in keeping with the National Treasury instruction note, the DTI designation, and the SANS 1286. SABS is then requested to undertake local content verification of the companies which would be providing goods to the state, and that local content verification is undertaken to SANS 1286. In some instances, a standard can be referenced in a piece of regulation, and in that case, the state must ensure that where a standard is referenced in the regulation, any product provided to the state carries a SABS mark. In other words, it has been audited and certified to a local content threshold.
Thank you. And insofar as the set-top boxes, is it correct that even with those, SABS was tasked with the responsibility to certify those set-top boxes that are going to be supplied to the various households?
Ma'am, if I may, SABS, in an MOU with the Department of Communications and the Department of Trade and Industry, was mandated, as I set out in my statement, to undertake, amongst others, to undertake conformity assessment of set-top boxes. And it established a laboratory and the capabilities to do that. We do not, as a 3B public entity, carry a compliance mandate. In other words, we cannot say to Department X, you have to come and test, or the companies that are supplying you have to come and test. We carry out the mandate of conformity assessment. And my understanding is that the policy, as originally conceived, referenced the SANS 862.
Yes, thank you. And I'm aware of the fact that today you are not going to be talking to the specifics because a technocrat from your department will come and deal with matters that relate to which companies were ever tested for this and which companies were compliant, and all of that type of detail is going to come later. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am. I can speak to some of it, but yes. Detailed technical evidence would need to be advanced by an expert in the field, which yes. might be an auditor for certification or a laboratory engineer, a chairperson.
Yes, thank you. Then you deal with the monies and the setting up of the laboratory in paragraphs 4 of your statement, and you say you were allocated by the Department of Communications an amount of 26.3 million.
Chairperson, the original memorandum of understanding between the Department of Trade and Industry, which is the SABS shareholder, the Department of Communications, and the SABS agreed upon a sum of 30 million rand to be transferred to the SABS by the Department of Communication in order to establish the capacity, in other words, the equipment, and the capability, in other words, the requisite technical staff, to be able to test to the requirements of the SANS 862, and SABS did that. SABS never received 30 million, it received 26 million. Nevertheless, the requisite capacity and capability was established in order to test set-top boxes to the SANS 862.
Yes. And just just to get clarity on what, if one says this, one sees a particular set-top box, which is something that we are going to deal with later, and that person sees it, and that person wants to see whether that is SABS approved. The team has just put up some pictures to show what your SANS approval would look like. Could you just put up that demonstration, please? Thank you. Is that, sorry, Chair, could you, is that a, sorry.
Ma'am, Chairperson, that is not a SABS mark.
Just that one. Would that be a SABS one?
That is unequivocally not a SABS mark. A SABS.
I
Yes.
think I know
How it works.
how
Yes, Chair.
the SABS mark looks
Okay.
like. I am sure that's not the one.
No,
I mean, one
yes,
sees
but-
it in many products.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Could you just have a look at the one that will have your mark, please?
But
Chair, it's going to be-
I don't
it's going
know
to be-
if, but I don't know if we need to see it.
It's going to take a second, Chair.
Yeah.
Oh,
because-
but if you don't need to see it, then there is no
Yes,
need.
unless we anticipate that there'll be some disputes about whether certain boxes
That is
were
the
SABS
point.
approved.
That
Or
is
there
the
will
point,
be
Chair.
some dispute.
Yes, yeah, there is that. That's the point.
Yes, and
thank
there will
you.
be some dispute about whether
They
a particular
were
mark is
approved.
a SABS mark.
That is correct.
Okay,
yes.
then that's fine. Let's see it.
All right. The second one? Is it not coming through?
Do you
No,
want
no,
to,
Chair, if
to
it-
give
if it's
them
a
a
problem-
chance to get it
Okay.
while you continue?
Well, we continue,
Yeah, they
okay.
must look for it, and so when you go back to them, they must have it ready.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. So then you, in paragraph 4, you also deal with the fact that the lab itself is now losing staff and it's underutilized. And could you just tell the chairperson what could be the reasons for this lack of enthusiasm to actually utilize and use the lab, and what would the result would be in terms of products maybe that do not go through the lab process?
Chairperson, a laboratory housed at the SABS tests to certification. In other words, if there's a product which is being certified in an audit process, that certification can include testing.
So there's got to be testing in order to have certification.
Not in every instance, but certainly in many products. If I may give an
Oh, okay,
example, Chairperson, a bottle of water, the company would seek a certification for the bottle of water, and the durability of the glass or the characteristics of the bottle or the chemical composition of the water could be tested to the certificate.
Okay.
But there's another form of testing, which is customer-specific requirement testing, Chairperson, where a customer may bring a product for testing, including, for example, to be able to meet the conformity requirements for the exporting of a product into another jurisdiction. So the laboratories don't only test to certification, they would test for other reasons. But to specifically answer the question, a laboratory which in this case cost 26 million to set up and which incurs recurring operational costs in the form of maintenance, the payment of the staff, and so on and so forth, depends upon the volume of testing which passes through. And I can say that there has been a very low volume of testing in the laboratory specifically set up for set-top boxes. And in fact, we have incurred significant losses, which we estimate in the time available to be 1.8 million. And the viability of the laboratory is in serious question, and the administrators are contemplating closing the laboratory since it is not viable, and in the total revenue of the institution, only a small fraction is from the public fiscus. The bulk of the revenue arises from commercial payments for standards, certification, laboratory services, and local content verification and consignment inspection.
Yes. If a product carries the made in South Africa stamp or manufactured in South Africa stamp, is that an equivalent of what you would expect to have at least gone through the SABS standards?
No, Chair.
No.
The made in South Africa is unequivocally not a SABS mark. Remember that a SABS mark is a certification to a particular standard, whether it's a standard, in this case 862, or a local content standard, which is 1286.
Yes, thank you. Just what I had said, relating to the question that if that product has got made in South Africa and you don't see, or do you see a SABS mark there?
Chairperson, there is definitely no SABS mark on that display.
Yes, thank you. And then lastly, could you
In
just...
fact, there is not even an imitation of a SABS mark, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes, thank you. And then in this next one, we just showed that where it has the SABS approval, would it come up in that way?
Chairperson, the middle stamp is the SABS mark, and it is the customer view on whether or not that product has been certified by SABS. The manufacturer is in possession of the certificate which enables the manufacturer to stamp the mark on the product for sale,
yes,
or distribution.
Yes.
That sounds strange to me. I hope I understand it correctly. The South African Bureau of Standards is the authority that by law has been given power to certify goods and products to meet certain standards, to be meeting certain standards. It sets the standard as well, isn't it? It sets the standards and then certifies that those goods or products, whether those goods or products meet that standard. Is that right?
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes. So when I see South African Bureau of Standards mark on any product, then I have the comfort that because I have high regard for the South African Bureau of Standards, and knowing that it is an authority that performs this certification job in terms of the law, I have the comfort that then the product must be fine.
Chairperson, that is absolutely correct. Please
Yes.
bear in mind that certificates expire after
Yes.
3 years.
Yes.
And therefore, companies are required to renew
Yes.
the permit, the
Yes.
certification, and then
Yes.
auditors re-audit the company.
Yes.
Where there's testing required, there might be
Yes.
testing, and
Yes.
they are reissued a permit which
Yes.
allows that company to stamp the product with the SABS mark, which is a mark, obviously, of high quality to the requisite standard. A standard would differ by product and
Yes.
sector of the economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my understanding was that only the South African Bureau of Standards can put that stamp on a product. And that when I see that mark, I say it's the South African Bureau of Standards who have satisfied themselves that this product has got all the ingredients and the features that are required for this product when it meets the required standard. Now, from what you have said, I'm getting the impression that somebody else, a company, an entity, can put the stamp, the SABS mark on its product on the basis that, in their view, that product meets the SABS standard. Did I misunderstand something?
Chair, if I failed to communicate that adequately, I apologize.
I'd have misunderstood.
No company can voluntarily use a SABS mark unless they have been through a certification process and been issued with a certification which allows them to use the SABS mark. We must, of course, be mindful that there might be certain, cases where companies may use the SABS mark illegally because they haven't renewed the permit, in which case SABS conducts market surveillance, and if there is a company that is using the SABS mark illegally, we would approach the company and the courts to ensure that the illegal use of a SABS mark is stopped immediately.
Let's go back to the example of that bottle in front of you. If I manufacture a bottle and I bring it to SABS and ask SABS to certify it and put its mark on it, I don't know whether they put its mark or they authorize me to put their mark on it. But basically, I go through that process and everything goes well. Is the position that the way this works is that once you have, so to speak, certified a sample, then you give me authority or permission to go and manufacture other bottles of the same type. And I undertake to manufacture them in the same way as the one that you have seen, and make sure that it has got same things that the one I gave to you had. And then if I'm satisfied that I have made it in that way, then I don't take it back to you. I put your mark on it. Is that how it works?
Chairperson, broadly speaking correctly, but if I may add, in order to secure certification of the bottle in our example, you would have to purchase the required standard. In other words, a standard developed in a process involving industry experts, academics, scientists, in what is called technical committees, which either develop, according to South African conditions, a homegrown standard, or they adapt an international standard belonging to the International Standards Organization. But a manufacturing company would purchase a standard. The certification process is carried out by SABS, which is suitably qualified and accredited auditors going to the plant or factory which produces the bottle of water to ensure that the production accords with the requirements set out in the standard. If the product, in this case the bottle of water, in the standard also has to have certain of its characteristics tested, then the SABS laboratories would test to the requirements of the certification. At the end of the auditing process, the compliance report would go to an authority within the SABS, which ensures that due and proper process has been followed, and the company is issued with a certificate which enables it to stamp its products for the duration of that permit, that certificate, which is 3 years, with a SABS mark. At the end of the 3 years, in order to ensure that there is conformity assessment is robust, that the company, in this case, wouldn't have to repurchase the standard, but they have to renew the permit and undertake for the next phase of the ownership of the SABS mark another certification which may involve auditing and testing. So this is not a situation where you get a certificate and for the rest of time you can use the SABS mark. It is a very specific set down internationally process that you have to follow. SABS is then accredited by the South African National Accreditation System, an agency of government, and in many cases, international accreditation authorities that come to SABS and check that our systems, our auditing, our testing, and the entire process meets rigorous requirements of the certification process. I hope, Chairperson, that answers the question.
Yes, maybe let's take it further. I'm trying to understand to what extent the system is open to abuse. From what I think, for some reason, I took it that each bottle or product that has got a SABS mark has gone through a SABS certification or testing process, but on reflection, probably that's impossible to happen. I mean, millions of bottles couldn't have all gone through the SABS process. So, but if once I give you that bottle and I say, I intend manufacturing bottles exactly like this, and when I sell them, I want them to carry a SABS mark. It seems to me from what you are telling me that certain things must be in place, lab and talk about academics and the industry, blah, blah, blah. You would then, after testing, provide the certification, but the certification gives the manufacturer, in this case of the bottle, the right to put the SABS mark on all its bottles, I assume, that are made like that one. And then when they are sold with that mark. Now, I'm wondering whether, if, as the business person, I'm supposed to do that, obviously, one should assume that I will have an interest to make sure that my business has a good name in the market, that these bottles which carry this SABS mark are really of quality, and I don't have a situation where maybe some are not really up to that standard, the SABS standard. But I'm wondering whether, if I'm established, everybody knows that my bottles have got the SABS mark, but I run out of ingredients that must be used in order to manufacture this bottle. Instead of using 5 that are required, I use 3, but I don't want to send out to the market bottles from my company that don't have the SABS mark, because my company is known to only sell bottles with a SABS mark. And then whether I can put the SABS mark, I can cheat, in other words, cheat the public, put the SABS mark, even though this batch of bottles maybe don't actually meet that standard. Whether the system allows that to happen or not.
Chairperson, if I may answer in this particular manner. Remember that a SABS mark is a voluntary process. It's a mark of conformance to a particular standard. If a standard is referenced in a piece of legislation because there are health, safety, and other concerns, then another institution of the state, the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications, comes into play. They may use the testing capabilities at SABS or other test houses to ensure that that company and agro-processing products can apply, or health and safety products of one kind and another. And NRCS is not the only regulator. Remember, there are many other regulators. If a standard is referenced in a regulation, then it is absolutely critical that the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications comes into play, and they have the responsibility to ensure that it's not just a question of a golden sample, but that there are regular checks on the conformity of that compulsory specification. If I may give you an example, the Department of Health and the National Treasury purchased condoms. The legislation and the tender documentation references the standard in law, and therefore, in those instances, the SABS mark is a mark also of quality, which can be tested against from time to time and is tested from time to time. But the SABS mark in itself is a voluntary mark, unless a procuring department or a regulatory authority says, we are procuring from the private sector, and a condition of that procurement is that the product must carry a SABS mark.
It would not be SABS' role to, from time to time during the term of a license that it has given to a manufacturer to use a SABS mark, it wouldn't be its role to, from time to time, pay surprise visits to the manufacturer's lab, for example, just take samples, check whether there is no cheating in the sense in which I've made, to say, okay, bottles are made in the same way that they are supposed to in terms of what was tested, so that that is the threat that a manufacturer has of being caught if he sends out bottles with a SABS mark which don't deserve to have a SABS mark.
To the best of my knowledge, Chairperson, no, but it's an area where
that somebody else might be able to talk about.
we could provide further technical clarity to that. But to the best of my knowledge, no.
Yes, okay, no, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. And then, as you've already testified to the obligations, but maybe just to emphasize one obligation in terms of the MOU that you referred to at page 13, that deals with the obligations of SABS insofar as the set-top boxes are concerned.
Did you say page 13?
Page 13, yes, Chair.
I beg your pardon, which page?
13, page 13 on the right-hand corner. Okay. 13. Okay. Are you there?
I'm not, sorry.
No.
Is the red numbers on the right-hand corners of the pages?
Okay, I beg your pardon.
Yes. After the yellow.
Yes.
I beg your
divider.
pardon. I beg your
Yes.
pardon.
Thank you. And then there's clause 9, which deals with obligations of the parties, and then it deals with SABS shall provide the following services, and then the feasibility study to determine full cost of setting up a fully accredited laboratory. The feasibility study must be concluded within 2 months of this agreement's signature. That was done, is that correct?
Yes, Chairperson.
And you have attached that feasibility study as Annexure B. It appears, Chair, from pages 32 onwards. And then 9.1.2, testing of set-top boxes to the applicable South African national standard or other specification and provide applicable test reports.
Yes, Chairperson.
And then provision of discounted rates for local manufacturers wishing to be certified by SABS, which includes SABS product certification, SABS factory audits, consignment inspections, and other relevant certification schemes as agreed by both parties. And
Yes,
then
yes,
maybe
Chairperson.
audit reports and certificates which will be provided by SABS for applicable audits. And then maybe those are the most relevant ones to the discussion that we are having this morning. Am I right?
Yes, Chairperson. To the very best of my knowledge, SABS has honoured all the obligations to the MOU signed between the Department of Communication, the DTI, and the SABS.
Yes. The witness before you yesterday, Mr. Roy Kruger, linked the manufacturing of these set-top boxes within the country to job creation. Now, can I ask whether the fact that now the factory itself is becoming, where you have to test these products is becoming redundant, and do you have any idea of where the manufacturing of the set-top boxes is happening? But if you don't, then you can just tell the chairperson.
We don't, because it's not our mandate. It's a Department of Trade and Industry mandate. I can say without fear of contradiction that local manufacturing is, as set out in numerous government documents, unequivocally a generator of not only employment, but it has multiple other economic spillovers, skills creation, supply development, and so on and so forth. Please bear in mind, of course, that the SABS mandate is to certify and test to a standard. And we are not in a position to force a government department to insist that public sector procurement conforms to the standard. That's a policy matter of government. We provide the certification and the laboratory testing capabilities, which we did to the terms and conditions of the MOI. The fact that there's been so little certification and testing to the capacity that we established is beyond our remit. I can say that 3 companies went for local content verification. Remember, there's a separate standard, and all 3 of their certificates have expired. And since 2015, 11 companies have had tests undertaken on their equipment, but that's not to the certification. They can come for other forms of testing. We can provide you with detail of what they came to test for. It may be, for example, that they were testing for an export destination to a different standard. But in the time available, we don't have that information other than 11 companies came, and in 4 years, that is simply not capable, or that kind of revenue and passing through the laboratories is completely unsustainable for the existence of a testing facility. And as I said, we have incurred costs of 1.8 million.
Yeah, we have 1.6 at paragraph.
1.6, I beg your pardon.
Paragraph 4.1.4.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. That is the evidence from this witness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to give evidence and to share with the Commission your knowledge of how SABS, of the SABS role in this project. Thank you very much. If a need arises for us to ask you to come back, we will ask you. But thank you very much, and you are excused. Thank you.
Chair, I beg leave to hand up Exhibit CC 35, which I meant to hand up. It's the SABC policy bundle. It deals with the DTT policy, the changes to the policy, various policies from 2008. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want this to be admitted or not yet?
Yes, Chair, may it be admitted so that the next time when we come, we know it's already part of the exhibits. We've marked it policy bundle.
The lever arch file containing or marked SABC policy bundle will be marked Exhibit CC 35.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that, with your leave, would then bring us to the end of today's proceedings, because we were thinking of having two witnesses, which is the one witness that could not attend today. And we will approach Chair for another allocation, because, Chair, you would recall that on the very first day when we started, we had placed various boxes of material before you. We have not dealt with that material. For instance, the evidence of Dr. Buloka, who's going to deal with specific contracts and point out the irregularities and unlawful awards of those tenders. That evidence will have to come in the next session. The evidence of Mr. Zikode, who is the forensic auditor for the SABC, who has covered over 100 investigations. We have, he has placed most of those before you. Those are the ones that were placed on the first day when we started. But we are now, he's doing a second exercise of simply selecting the ones that are really crucial for placing before you, instead of dealing with the over 160 investigations. And then thirdly, Chair, we would recall that the evidence of Professor Mutubi, who came before you last week, is supposed to come back. And also
Dr. Mutubi, huh?
Fatuani Mutubi.
Yes.
Yes. I beg your pardon, he is supposed to come back and deal with the actual Auditor General's findings in relating to some of the tenders. That evidence as well, Chair, we would request that it be allocated in the second session of the proceedings. Then we have other witnesses that are lined up, but we will provide you with a memorandum latest by Monday of who those witnesses are, what are they going to be talking about. But of course, there's just two witnesses that we are going to come and discuss who have not yet given us statements, but have been promising to give statements, but now have changed, take one of them now seeks legal representation. Then we would just ask that, Chair, that those be directed to submit their statements by a certain date. Yes.
No, that's fine. And to the extent that Ms. Swanepoel
Yes, Chair.
may have to be called,
Yes.
There might be no need to delay too long
Yes.
calling her,
Yes.
because her evidence would cover a very narrow
Issue. Yes.
issue.
Yes.
So it may well be that within the next 2 weeks or so, we might consider finding a space for her in the morning, maybe from 9 to 10.
Yes, Chair. We'll
So we'll need to look at that.
yes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, no, that's fine. We are therefore going to adjourn the proceedings for the day, but we'll continue on Monday. I think on Monday we have one or more witnesses, 2 witnesses for Estina, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Chair, but I think the evidence leader for Estina was here this morning. I think there might be just some changes in that lineup. But
Yeah.
yes, but I think she's going to
Yes.
come as soon as we adjourn.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, all right. We'll adjourn then and resume on Monday.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
Thank you.